I'm here talking with Jason Mewes, who will be performing with Kevin Smith Sunday, April 28th at the Paramount in Huntington as part of their Jay and Silent Bob Get Old tour. Jay, this is such an honor. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm very good, very good.
I get so nervous and starstruck when talking to celebrities. Is there a moment in your career where you were sharing the screen or the stage with somebody and you're just in complete awe of like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm with this guy right now?
Oh my gosh, honestly, the good thing is I feel like there's been many, so there's been many, honestly, over the years, like getting to work with Will Ferrell, Chris Rock, all of them I'm always feeling a little, I guess awkward and stuff, but it's like usually we're doing a scene together or whatever. And I sort of, I guess I just try to get in there, but yes, I would say the one that stands out to me is, it stinks because over the years, people are always like, oh my gosh, what was it like hanging out with George Carlin and stuff? That one for me was like I admired George Carlin because Kevin would talk about him so much and I knew who he was and I know he's a genius and all that. But when I was with him and Kevin, they would like have these conversations and they both use like big words, and they would talk about his book, and they would talk about some of his stand-up. Like, Kevin knew his stand-up. Kevin knew everything. Like, Kevin watched and read and everything about George. So they would have these conversations, and I would stand there next to them, and I wouldn't have anything to involve myself in the conversation. So I would just stand there and listen. And so I would say out of most of the people, like, someone like him, honestly, he was someone that it was really awesome to work with and stuff. But I felt like I really never had I never really had a great conversation with him because I was like intimidated by him and stuff. I didn't feel like I had anything smart to say or anything funny to say to him. So, but definitely him. And then I would definitely say Stanley. Stanley was our first studio movie, Mallrats. We did Clerks, but Clerks was just a bunch of friends. But Mallrats was the first time we're in Minnesota. We're staying in a hotel where there's wardrobe and stunt guys. And Stan Lee is like, that's how Kevin and I really started bonding over comic books. And like now here I am getting to meet Stan Lee, and it was so surreal to me. Like, so that was my first, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm meeting Stan Lee and this is so surreal. And I chatted with him a little bit and stuff like that. But George Carlin, I would say, is the one who, like, I felt like, oh my gosh. I mean, but there's so many. Again, I got the Luke Scott, like, Mark Hamill.
Carrie Fisher as well.
Carrie Fisher, yeah. Like, but again, I feel like Carrie Fisher, I was able to sit and chat with and have we had a couple great conversations. Same with Mark Hamill. Like, I don't know. There's like, I feel like there was most of the people, like, I would feel intimidated, but I felt like I had something to contribute to the conversation. But with George Carlin, I just was super nervous. I felt like I didn't have anything that I could contribute, and I just never really got to have a moment with him. So, but yeah, those again, I hope that makes sense. That makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Now, you mentioned Stan Lee, and Kevin Smith was sort of a pioneer with having the Stan Lee cameo, because every Marvel movie, while he was alive, you would see the Stan Lee cameo. Is there a Marvel property that you think is the top of the class? Is it the X-Men? Is it Spider-Man? And have you been keeping up with any of these shows and movies that have been coming out lately? The X-Men animated show just came back a few weeks ago and has been really good. You watching any of that?
I'm excited. Well, you know what? I watched the first episode, and I thought they were going to put them all out at the same time. Yeah. So I watched the first one thinking I'd get the binge watch, but I realized they weren't putting them all out. So I want to wait because I love it. Like, I know it sounds so goofy, but seriously, like when the opening started with the music, it like seriously brought me back to my childhood. Like, I loved watching the original back then. I've seen every episode multiple times. So I'm just saying, yes, I've watched the first episode and I'm very excited about it, but I really don't want to wait till each week. So I want to wait till they all come out and I'm just going to binge watch all of them. But yeah, I mean, I pretty much, I try to keep up, I've watched. I started watching Echo recently. Because I love Vincent D'Onofrio. I think he's amazing. So I can't wait. Like I'm waiting. I started watching Echo, but I haven't got to finish it yet. But yeah, I've watched all the TV shows. I watch all the movies. I mean, I enjoy all of them. I don't think there's a bad one, honestly, because even if I feel like, oh man, this wasn't up to I was expecting more and I thought it was going to be better, but it still is exciting to me because again, I think about way back in the day. I remember going to comic conventions in like '98 and seeing the Fantastic Four movie. Someone bootlegged the VHS,
Yeah.
and you could buy it at one of the booths, and then watching it, and the special effects were so bad, and the movie, but it was still like, oh my gosh, there's a Fantastic Four live action movie, and then the Punisher with Dolph Lundgren, but he didn't even have the skull, he didn't even have the skull, like the outfit, but it still was exciting that they were attempting to do it, and here we are years and years later, So I'm just saying, for them to have comic book movies, live action movies, all the comic books I grew up reading, to have all these movies and get to see all these characters. Like I remember watching in the beginning when the movies first came out. The X-Men movie came out. I feel like is one of the first. They had these little, up in the screen on the TV in the bar. There would be a scene between two characters, and on the top it would say Hank McCoy, which I knew was the Beast.
Yeah.
But no one else did. No one else that didn't know comics knew what it was. I mean, people who knew comics did, of course. But that excited me because I'm like, yeah, this is my world. This is my. I mean, and now since Avengers and everything, so many people love comics, know more about comics, and it's a different time now. But yeah. So anyway, I don't know if I answered your question.
You answered several questions, but yeah, it is crazy that you go to a Target, you go to a Walmart, you see mom and pop, and then you see a teenage girl all wearing Captain America shirts. It's certainly a different time. When I was growing up, I was one of the few people wearing a Green Lantern shirt to school, and you get bullied for it. But now, you're just one of the normal people now if you're rocking superhero memorabilia.
100%. 100%.
And I think that's a smart idea, though, what you're saying with the X-Men show and binging it, because every week it sort of ends, and I just cannot wait for the next week. So avoid spoilers at all costs. But I'm telling you, Jay, this is better written, and I think a better show than an original show from the early 90s. It's really high-quality stuff, so I think you're going to love it.
100%. Yeah, my one friend, swear, he texted me going, hey, did you watch episode, I don't remember if it was
5.
4.
Episode 5 is the one, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, it's probably the best episode of television out there right now. And I was like, really? It's that good? He goes, I'm not kidding you. I was like, well, I can't wait to see it, but I'm waiting.
Yeah, it was one of those, you're just stuck watching the credits with your jaw open, just in awe that they actually went that. And we're not going to spoil anything, but it is insane that they went that route. You mentioned Vincent D'Onofrio. Now, I know Kevin Smith has said that Nicolas Cage is an actor that he would love to work with to direct. Is there somebody, you could even pick somebody that's dead or alive, that you would love the opportunity to share the screen with?
Oh, I mean, I would want to say, I guess Vincent, but I feel like I feel like if I was doing a scene with him, I would feel, nervous that I'm going to mess up my part and it would upset him. And I don't know. So it's like, I think of all these things, but I guess him, I mean, honestly, I really, really dig him, not just because he's the kingpin, but I've watched Law and Order, Criminal Intent, over and over again. It's one of my favorite shows. Or I would say, who is, honestly, it's goofy, but I'm a huge Murder, She Wrote fan, and I would love to work with Jessica Fletcher, which isn't her real name, Angela Lansbury. But I know it's such a weird pull, but I just think she's I don't know, that show, I used to watch that with my mom. My mom's passed now, but that's a show we used to watch together, and I still love the show. Every once in a while I'll go on Peacock and watch it over again, even though I've seen it a bunch of times. So I don't know. I would say if I'm going for someone classic for me, Angela Lansbury, someone now, I'll just throw out Vincent D'Onofrio. But there's many. I'm sure there's there's many. Like, I go to comic conventions, and it's so surreal to me now. Even I've done a bunch, but like I'll go in the green room, and all of a sudden it'll be like William Shatner, Bruce Campbell, Vincent D'Onofrio, and I always get intimidated, and I'll leave the green room. Like a lot of people hang out and sit down at the table and like eat lunch and stuff with everybody, and I'm always like, I still, even though I'm there, like I have the green room pass, but I still feel like I don't belong there.
You're an outsider. That's sort of like maybe how you felt with the George Carlin thing, like you don't belong.
Exactly. No, I still think I've been doing it 30 years, and I still feel. I just don't feel. I still feel like I don't fit into the world, even though we've done tons of stuff, and I love doing what I do. It's like I got to direct. I don't know if you know. I've directed one movie so far. I directed a movie called Madness in the Method, and I got to direct Stan Lee before he passed.
Wow.
He did a cameo in my movie, and that was really amazing for me. Like, not only that he was in my movie that I'm directing, but I actually got to direct him, and he came down and hung out for a couple hours, and that was pretty surreal for me. But yeah, so.
You mentioned the comic conventions. I'm a big convention guy. I actually just went to a convention in New Jersey to meet a bunch of athletes. And the one guy I idolized, his name's Drew Bledsoe. He's a football player from back in the day. And I drove, 2.5 hours to meet him. I spent all this money to meet him. And you just sort of walk up to him, you shake his hand, and then, he spent like 20 seconds with me. So when people meet you at a convention, I guess it really depends. Like, do you have time to really chat with them, or is that sort of the norm? Like, you just have to, take the picture, sign the autograph, move on. I feel like you'd be more personable, though.
No. I mean, honestly, just to get his back, it depends. Here's my thought is I feel like I have time because I usually what I'll do is I'll sit and chat with someone, and if they start to go like 5 minutes, it depends. I feel like if it's a busy convention, I mean, you got to think – I always feel bad because you'll see people lined up for people. Like, I don't know if this person you're talking about had a line waiting around the door, and he's only there one day. Of course he's got to be quick because he's got to get through the other 100, 200 people. If he spends 10 minutes with you, he's not going to be able to spend 10 minutes with everyone. Otherwise, the show is going to be like, hey, we're closing. Everyone has to leave. So I always feel – but, like, when we do photos, it's like that. When you do the professional photos – if you have 300 people, you only have like a 2-hour window to take 300 pictures. And I know Kevin always feels bad because people will come in and they've been waiting in line for an hour, and then they're like, all right, and you take a pose, they take the picture, they're like, next, and they scooch out the room. You barely get to say hello. But again, it stinks, but at the same time, you have to get through everyone. There was one time where we literally went over and they were closing, and we didn't even get to the last like 20 people, and we winded up being like, I'm sorry, can we go outside? We'll take some selfies with you. But it just didn't. So I'm just saying, if he didn't have a line and he didn't spend 5 minutes with you, then that's a bummer. I feel like that's, there was no one behind you or even maybe 5 people behind you. I feel like when there's not a lot of people waiting, like if it's a slower show, I'll sit and spend 15 minutes. And if it is busy and someone's like, hey, man, I really want to talk to you about something, like, me and my dad had this thing and I want to tell you it. And if there's a line of people, I'll say, hey, listen, can you come? Are you here for the next couple of days? Can you come around? And if you see no one at my table, come over and we'll sit and chat for 10 minutes. And usually people will do that unless they're leaving. They might go, oh, man, I'm leaving today. I have to drive 5 hours. Then I'll say, well, can you come back in like a half hour and let's see if there's no one at my table, then we could chat a little longer,
Yeah, well, Jason Mewes is a man of the people. That's why he will talk to you. Now you have.
I do know that I have heard stories though of people who just in general don't want to chat. I've heard that some people will literally not even look up at the person. They'll sign their name, they won't personalize it, and they won't even look at the person. They'll go next.
Yeah.
Next. And I don't think that's very nice. I don't think that's, especially some of them, it's not, you're waiting a long time and it's not cheap, so.
Yeah. I've heard Susan Sarandon lately at some of these conventions, not very pleasant to be around. But, Jay, you're going to be at the Paramount on the 28th, as we were talking at the beginning of this, for Jay and Silent Bob Get Old, you and Kevin Smith. So what can fans expect from this show?
It's what's been fun about this is like it's sort of like a peek into like what if someone's like, hey, I haven't seen this, especially for us, we haven't done a movie, in a little bit, and people are wondering what we're up to. It's like usually Kevin and I open up, we tell a few stories. You get to hear some stories about what's going on with me and Kevin. Like, this was on our way here on the plane, this crazy thing happened. And, Kevin and I last week went here and guess what happened? And we tell some stories and we'll tell some stories from like maybe the last movie we made. We just did a cruise. We did the Jay and Silent Bob cruise. It was our first one. So we'll probably tell a couple fun stories about that. And then usually we wind up, we play a game at the end. We read something Kevin wrote that hasn't been out there yet. Like, again, nothing's set in stone, but it's just for me, I feel like it's just a peek into what's been going on with Kevin and I, and what's in the future, what we're going to be doing, something maybe people are expecting or hoping or wondering about, and then a couple games and some stuff. So again, it's been fun for us for the past. I mean, we've done it for 8 years. We've taken sort of a break. We've done a couple here and there, but it'll be nice. We're going to be on the East Coast, and our hometown will be Jersey, New York. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm like excited about it, and plus Kevin and I haven't done one in a while, so we have a lot of stories to tell and a lot of fun stuff to talk about. Things that are happening, like we have some movies coming up. I don't want to say on here because we're going to talk about stuff on there. And some things that are coming up in the future, things that have happened in the past. I got kids now, so I got some funny stories I'm going to talk about my kids. So,
well, speaking of your kids and your family, how important? I know you've been open about some of the issues that you've had in the past, and I've heard you on Steve-O's podcast. Talk about some of your substance issues that you've dealt with. You've been sober for quite some time. How important is having your wife, Jordan, who is awesome from everything I see with her, and, being a dad, how important has that been into your sobriety?
Definitely super. I mean, it's been, honestly, having the kids, the podcast was a huge help for me, keeping straight, because Kevin and I would tour like every weekend. And so I was so busy and we'd be talking about it. And what was great about the podcast is we used to do a count like, hey, I have 13 years, 2 years sober, 3 years sober. And I felt very accountable. Like I even used to have bad dreams when we'd be on the road. I'd have a dream that I went out and drank and I'd be like, oh my God, I have to get on stage tomorrow and tell, 800 people or whatever amount of people that I have 1 day sober now because I messed up. And that used to terrify me. So it was honestly such a help that we would be doing this and also I'd be out somewhere and someone would be like, hey, dude, I listened to the podcast. How many days sober? So people would call me out constantly. So the first 8 years, man, it was such a help for me to stay on track. And then not at the same time, don't get me wrong, I was with my wife. And she was a big help. Of course, she's always supportive. And of course I didn't want to disappoint her. And then with the kids, that just added to it. It's like, I'm so busy bringing the kid to the doctor or then to school, picking her up from school, bringing her to ballet, and the little man right now, he's running around like a madman. He wakes up at, 5:36. So, so it's like, I'm just constantly not only wanting to disappoint and be able to be present for my family. It's like, I don't want to disappoint them. And at the same time, I don't have time. Like not that I couldn't sneak around, but it's not like I have time to like go hang out at a bar and get myself in trouble. Like I just don't do that. And it's been amazing. Honestly, the family has been like what I've wanted for forever. Kevin always talks about it. Like, when I was 25, 30, I used to be like, man, I really want a family. I want to start a family. And even when I was a mess, I'd be a mess and that would be my ideal like scenario of what I thought was, a productive life is working and having a family. And I have that now. So it's been awesome. And like I said, I'm here to visit one of my good friends. His daughter's first birthday. And we're out in Santa Barbara. And so we're making it a little vacation / family vacation / going to see my friend's his birthday. or the kid's birthday, that is. So it's great, man. It's been really great.
It's funny you mentioned the dreams that you've had where you've disappointed. You wake up and you're like, did I drink? Because I'm an advocate for marijuana, but I haven't smoked in since 2011. And I would have these dreams. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And then you play it in your head like, did I really do that? And then it's funny that I wonder if that's a common theme that a lot of people have dreams that they fall off the wagon.
You definitely think so. I definitely remember having them more so in the beginning, and that was more even just in general. I would, then with the podcast, of course, it would be me about disappointing and stuff. But I do think it's common because I remember even in the first couple of years, like it was tough because I swear I would drive down the street and I would smell something and it would make me think of, this time I was in the park and I was using and and even though it wasn't a good memory, it was still a memory that would like bring me back and make my stomach turn. And then I would go past the Burger King and I used to go to this one Burger King and go in the bathroom and use. And it was, again, looking back, it's bad. But at the same time, the first couple of years, whenever I passed that, my stomach would turn. I'd get butterflies. And yeah, it's definitely was the first few years. I mean, it's tough in general, but it's tough the first couple of years, dreams and memories and all that stuff. So
yeah. Well, you mentioned being disappointed. Do you get disappointed when you get a bad review, or is that just something you try and ignore? Because everyone's a critic these days,
yes.
and some of your movies unfortunately don't have the best Rotten Tomato scores, but the fans love them, and that's what's important. Is that something you just tune out? Did it hurt you at first?
I 100% tune out, and I've always tuned out. I honestly am ignorant. I have not honestly seen. I just try to ignore it because I do think I would obsess, and that's why I don't. Especially even you would think of my first movie I directed, I would try to research people's feedback and all that, but I didn't want to. I don't want to know. All I've got to hear, which is great, and I'm sure it's all the people that come to see me at cons and my podcast, and I do stand-up comedy too. I do Jason Mewes and his amusing stories. And afterwards, I'll meet with people, and they'll be like, oh, my gosh, I watched your movie you directed. It was awesome. So the good thing is I've only heard good things about the movie I directed, but I'm sure there's tons out there with bad feedback, but I ignore that. I know Kevin has trouble ignoring that stuff, but I would rather just play ignorant, honestly. Ignorant to me is definitely bliss because in my head, every movie that I've done, even if I of course can't pass seeing reviews of, Rotten Tomatoes, like you said, bad Rotten Tomato views, or when Mallrats came out. I remember Zach and Mary Make a Porno. We had Craig Robertson and what's Zach?
Seth Rogen.
I can't think of the names. Seth Rogen, my bad.
Yeah.
And I remember Kevin was like, dude, these guys, the last movie they did, box office numbers were crazy. This movie's going to be the one that we're going to get good box office numbers. Rotten Tomatoes is going to be awesome. And I remember so of course I remember that didn't happen. And we were like, what the heck? But again, I didn't see anyone specifically point out that Jason Mewes was a horrible Lester, I just know the movie didn't do great. Of course, I couldn't ignore that. But I've ignored trying to research me personally and what people think about my character and about my acting and because I really do think I would obsess about it and it would get in my head. So,
and then
I don't pay attention to that.
It's just I'm reminded of the scene in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back when you go on the website and you see all the bad reviews and then you show up at all their houses and beat the crap out of them.
Exactly. I would want to do that. I really would because it's I know that I've gotten things where there was someone recently who took this really weird, and I only saw it because someone sent it to me, but someone took a picture of me and my kid and for some reason wrote really nasty stuff. And it was me holding her, and they put a circle around my hand. It was look at this pig touching his kid, or whatever, something really crazy and really mean. But in my head, I was like, man, I want really who is this? I want to find this dude. Why would you write that? So I know that, and that was one thing, and it was horrible. Don't get me wrong. but I'm just saying I know how I felt for that thing. If I looked at stuff constantly, I would really want to be like, let's fly around the country
Yeah.
and find everyone.
Well, speaking of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, is there a movie in the View Askew universe that you're most proud of? Is it one of the earlier works? Is it something more recently? Is there one that jumps to mind? You're like, this is where I'm at my peak right now. This is prime Jay.
No, that's another thing I don't do. For me, watching myself, I always feel like, oh, I could have done better there. I should have said this like that. I do feel like people tell me, just from feedback, not from me personally, but people say that I did really well in Dogma. They feel like Dogma is the movie where they felt like I really shined, and like they say I stole the movie, in the sense of that. So I don't know. I do feel like that one I had memorized the whole script. I was so nervous because Kevin told me, like, look, dude, all the movies we've done, we're working with Alan Rickman. He's a British actor. He doesn't play around. If you're doing a scene with him and you mess up your dialogue, he's not going to be happy, dude. Like, he'll be disappointed, and it's really going to mess us up. So Kevin got me so nervous. I used to read the script for hours every day from front to back. And I'm not exaggerating. I memorized almost every single person's role. Like, I knew everyone's dialogue. Like, I could sit there. We would go to rehearsals, and Kevin would be like, "Oh man, Lee's gonna be late because he had to do something. He'll be here in an hour. We need someone to read for him." I'll be like, "I'll do it." And he's like, "You don't have a script," and I'm like, "I don't need the script," and I honestly did. Like, so I don't know. I just feel like because of that and that. So I would say Dogma. Not only because people told me that, but I do feel like I really was like focused on that. Like, I really memorized the script and like, yeah. So
I want to quickly just talk about, being sober. Was it difficult making that first movie while being sober? Because I would imagine you would maybe have thoughts of like, am I still funny without being high? Is that something that you experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely there was times where I would feel that way, but until we got started working, I feel like, in the beginning, I thought that I wasn't going to be up to when we started filming. When we started filming, like, I remember Clerks 2 was one of the first ones I can remember that I was sober. Like, I had been sober for a couple years. I was feeling healthy. And I remember being like, oh my God, I'm not going to be as quick-witted, and it's not going to be as good. But it was the opposite. As soon as I started working, because I wasn't waking up feeling like hungover or sick because I didn't have anything to take or what have you, I felt like clear as a bell and like realized that I was a lot more on top of stuff. Like, I just felt better. I wasn't like movies before that. Even Dogma, for example, like by the end of Dogma, I started drinking again and using and stuff. And I remember that I'd be like, oh man, like this scene, we've been doing the same scene for like, because sometimes, you film a scene, you block out the scene and they're like, man, we got to set up these lights and do this stuff. And they're like, it'll be 10 minutes. I'm like, come on, 10 minutes? Why'd you call me to set, man? I'm going to go lay down in my trailer because I was hungover and tired, and I wanted to go lay down. Where Clerks 2, I'm like, 10 minutes? Fine, man. I'm going to sit here and do push-ups. I'm going to sit here and, like, go over the scene with so-and-so, So, yeah, I would definitely say I thought that at first, but then as soon as we started working, I felt the opposite.
That's awesome to hear. Now, Jay, you've also done some voice work over the years. The Clerks animated show is so good, and I think it only had 6 episodes. I feel like if that show came out like 6 or 7 years later and Adult Swim was really a thing, if it wasn't on ABC, I feel like that show could have lasted, 7, 8 seasons. And then you were just in the Kev's Masters of the Universe show. You were Stinkor. I think you did another role. Is that something you'd like to do more of, more cartoon voices? And do you have a favorite cartoon? Do you have a favorite cartoon growing up? And what was the experience like, doing the voice work?
So for Clerks, I agree with you. The Clerks animated, I say that to people all the time. I say, like, the bummer is I feel like Kevin was before his time. Like, the only thing I remember being out at that time was maybe The Simpsons, I think.
Yeah, King of the Hill, that's about it.
Yeah, it was like, there was no Rick and Morty. There was no, all the Bob's Burgers. All these other cartoons were not out. Mm-hmm. And it stinks because you're right. I feel like if it came out 7, 8 years later, it really would have popped because I think it's amazing. And most of people that have seen it, I just think no one got to see it. The network canceled it. But anyway, that being said, I love doing that. And I loved, yes, I've done, like you said, I've done the Masters of the Universe. I've got to do a couple animated movies. I've done some game characters. I was Mort in Fallout, which was amazing, this character Mort. But yes, I would love to do that. It's such a different thing because you have to I like to be animated with my hands and move around, but you can't really because you're in a booth and the microphone picks up everything. But I mean, you wake up, you go, and you could be in your pajamas and you could sit there for, playing around and stuff. We have a game coming out. Actually, I just did it. My last recording was I did voices, sound effects and stuff. We're coming out with a game soon. It's called Jay and Silent Bob Chronic Blunt Punch. And
is this a mobile
awesome.
game?
It looks, I don't know. I think they're going to have it on mobile, but right now I know it's going to be on a couple of the consoles.
Oh, hell yeah.
If you look it up, if you go on my Instagram, I think it's pinned on, or my TikTok as well. It's in there, the trailer for it. Honestly, watch it when we get off the phone.
Yeah.
I think you'll really dig it. It's sort of the same style as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or the old X-Men game.
Like beat 'em ups. Nice.
Yeah, so you could be Jay or Bob, and you can go, but there's really cool effects in it. You'll see it when you watch the trailer.
Is the Easter Bunny in it? I could see you guys fighting the Easter Bunny.
Everything.
Oh,
the
yeah?
Poop Monster, Easter Bunny. It's awesome, but the animation for the graphics, for it is really awesome. And then again, your special power is it's Jay and Bob, but then you get this special. While you're playing it, you get this thing you could turn into Blunt Man and Chronic, which are almost like Mega Man suits. It's pretty. Just watch the trailer and you'll understand. But yes, it's so much fun. I think doing the voiceovers, but it's tough. I realize I go on auditions all the time, and I'll be sitting in the lobby, and the role might be you might be in there for a role for a 12-year-old kid. And, I'll do my best 12-year-old kid, which isn't great. And then you'll see this, 60-year-old gruffy old man. And all of a sudden I'll hear him go in the booth and you'll be able to hear him. And he'll be like, hey, man, it's me, Billy. And he'll be spot on perfect. And I'm like, there's people out there that is their job and they're so good at it, And so I always feel like it's tough because it's yes, I get lucky sometimes someone wants the J voice or my voice, whatever. But when it comes to them just casting roles and voiceover actors, man, they are spot on, so it's tough to compete, to be honest.
You know what's funny, Jay? I watched the movie Freddy versus Jason a few weeks ago. I don't know if you've seen this. There's the character that's clearly a Jay ripoff. Is that have you seen that?
100%.
Is that something that you laugh at? You laugh at that, or what's your reaction when you see something like that?
Well, I laugh, but at the same time, I'm just well, why didn't they just call me? You know what I mean? I would have totally been in a Freddy versus Jason movie. Honestly, I would have. That would be so cool for me. I grew up watching the Freddys and the Jasons, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I got to be in a movie and got the that stuff appeals to me. Even if they were hey, we don't have the money to pay for you or whatever, I'm I'll do it for scale. Let's just do it. I get to be honestly, I get to be in a Friday the 13th Freddy movie. That'd be amazing. So, but yes, it is funny, but it's more funny because I just why didn't they honestly call me? And maybe they didn't do it on purpose. I don't know.
At least you guys were in Scream 3. So you got some horror icons there.
100%.
What's next for Jason Mewes? I think you said you might be teasing some stuff in the coming future. Is there anything you can announce, or is this something maybe we can get an exclusive here?
Well, again, there's things Kevin wants to announce. So nothing's set in stone. There's a couple scripts and movies that Kevin would really like to do that we're going to announce. He wants to talk about on the show. For me, though, for the most part, man, my main thing, usually I try to squeeze in. It's harder now with the kids, but I used to stream 3 hours a day on Twitch. I would play games. I would open up boxes. People would send me like Blizzard and people would send stuff, and I'd open them up on stream. And I love doing that. Like, honestly, if I could like direct a movie and do a Jay and Bob movie with Kevin, like one of those each a year, and stream the rest of the time. But also I have my amusing stories. I've been doing that more than anything, is my stand-up. Like in June, I'm going to be I'll be doing a bunch of stand-up. We're doing the podcast with, like we're coming there to do the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But that week, that we're doing, like we're going to Chicago, then we're Jersey, New York, and then we're going to London. And then I come back and I do a bunch of my amusing stories, stand-up comedy shows. And so right now for me in the future is a lot of stand-up comedy shows. I'm trying to get better at that, trying to be able to do more with that because I do enjoy it. But I've been doing clubs, like I do like clubs from 175 to like 300 capacity. My goal is to hopefully, get a special or do something eventually. And then, Kevin and I hopefully are going to do another movie that's in our universe. And again, I don't know. He has a couple on his thing, but I don't know what there's nothing set in stone for a plan unless he knows and I don't know. So, but hopefully there will be another Jay and Bob by the end of the year. And not Jay and Bob in general, but just a movie with Jay and Bob somehow in it.
I've been reading for years, whether it's Mallrats 2, another, Jay and Silent Bob. I even heard possibly a Clerks 4, but everyone that's fans of you guys, I'm sure will be there first in line. I know I will be. And I will be on April 28th at the Paramount in Huntington. I'll be there to see Jay and Silent Bob Get Old, which I'm sure will be awesome. Jay, this has been such a pleasure, dude. I mean, this is a dream come true getting to talk to you. I thank you so much for giving me 40 minutes or whatever you gave me.
No, I appreciate it, and thank you very much. And I will see you at the show.
Hell yeah.